Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming to tonight's Harsh Light. We are really, really excited to have Kate West with us and Short Supplies, Molly and Bex. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and turn off your videos and your microphones, just because Hi there. Sorry, there's an interruption from my child. Can you please close the door, sweetheart? Okay. Um, my flow has been interrupted. Yes, so tonight, yes, turn off your cameras and your microphones. So because we're recording this session and we will be posting this up as a resource online. So yeah, a little bit of background about Harsh Light, and then we'll do a quick kind of grounding somatic exercise. And then after that, I'll introduce the speakers and then hand over to them. So Harsh Light started 3 years ago. Probably a lot of you who are attending tonight have been to previous Harsh Lights before. Thank you for your support. And we started in the midst of the pandemic as a result of all our programs being canceled. I apologize, I can hear my son laughing, so I'm gonna close the door a bit more. Interruptions of life. And we decided to start Harsh Light as a way to platform some of the conversations that we were having as art workers, conversations that revolved around survival, about trying to get emergency funding, about what to do with programs that, we had planned, but now no longer could happen. So all of these things, we felt we needed a more public space to be discussed, and hence Harsh Light. And we invited a lot of practitioners whose work we wanted to center. We wanted to invite people who also wanted to invite other people to have conversations with them. So in this case, we invited Molly and Beck from Short Supplies and asked them, hey, who would you like to have a conversation with, who? And then they in turn invited Kate. And so that's kind of like been this sort of model of trying to figure out our peers, figure out our colleagues, trying to, put foreground some of the works and conversations that we think are important. So that's the beginning of Harsh Light. And since then, the pandemic, I guess, has died down somewhat. And we continue to try and keep Harsh Light as a platform, a regular platform, a few times a year online, where we check in with each other and try and talk about some things that might be within our orbit. And in this case, it's been artist-led initiatives. As you might know, Bloc Projects ourselves, we are an artist-led initiative. And we started some 25 years ago as a very small space in Sheffield. And we continue to be kind of living, and just right before this session, in fact, Kate, Bex, Molly, and I were talking about the precarity of funding and how Harsh Light, this is the first one we've hosted this year because we, have been trying to get our funding together. We tried to get an MPO, that didn't happen. And then we tried to apply for project grant and, we're very nervously awaiting the results until only very recently that we realized that we got it, and we're very happy. But that is actually a very relevant thing for tonight as well, as we think about, the sustainability and longevity, possible longevity of artist-led projects. So I'm very excited to do that tonight, to hold the space for that conversation. But before I hand it over to Kate and Molly and Bex, something that we do at Harsh Light, since we're online, is that we try to just do a very quick kind of settling down in our spaces respectively across the world, theoretically, but probably just mostly across the UK. So a very quick exercise I'd like to do tonight is just a breathing one. Lord knows I need to just take a few deep breaths. I've got a really bad cold and cough. So a few deep breaths, and something that's also quite nice to do is to rub your hands and make them nice and warm. If you wear glasses like myself, you can take them off. And by the way, you can turn off your cameras as well, speakers, if you don't want to do this into the camera, but I'm happy to do this as a demonstration. from your hands. And then with the sort of fattest palm part of your hand, this sort of palm bit, you can sort of sit into your eyes and close your eyes and sit them on top of your eyes. And just let them rest. If you've got a table in front of you, just let your elbows rest on the table and let your head just sort of rest in your hands like that. And then we can just take 3 deep breaths in and out of our noses, and we'll come back to the room together after that. Okay, so warm up your hands, close your eyes, put your head in your hands, and take 3 deep breaths through your nose and out your nose. Thank you. Hope that was nice for you as well. So yes, I will now introduce Kate, Molly, and Bex, and then hand it over to them. So let me just go back out of my, I have to read some of the bio, I apologize. So first I will introduce Bex and Molly from Short Supply. Short Supply is an artist-led organization that creates opportunities for emerging artists within an increasingly competitive industry, producing exhibitions, talks, and workshops that address the barriers creatives face to employment and education. And Kate is currently head of artist development and research at East Street Arts, and previously was the senior producer of Guild at East Street Arts National Advocacy, Networking, and Development Program for Artist-Led Spaces. So we're actually all 3 of us based here in the North, somewhat close to each other, which is quite nice. And hopefully one day we'll all get to hang out. But yeah, for the first, so yeah, actually, this is a little bit of housekeeping. I should have done it in the beginning, but we are going to separate our conversation into 2 halves, mainly for our BSL interpreters and for our deaf audiences to have a little break in between. So for the first half, we'll focus on a question and the second half on another. The first one, we're going to be focusing primarily on the idea of ambition. Is that right, speakers? Yeah, okay. So about how to grow ambition while maintaining a grassroots vision. So that's kind of the overall question that we'll be framing the first half around. So thank you so much, Kay, Molly, and Bex. I'll hand it over to you now.
Thanks so much, Sunshine. That was a really lovely introduction. And I know it's not the easiest to hold these Zoom spaces. They're still, even though we're all kind of used to it, they still feel a bit wobbly, don't they, Kate?
Absolutely. I don't think any of us have got it like completely nailed down yet. And we've been doing this, what, 2 years?
For sure. But yeah, so we've brought some really simple, easy topics to the table today, stuff that I'm sure we'll be able to solve right here and now. Very low ambition, easygoing subject matter here. But I suppose with ambition, I can give a little preamble, and then maybe Kate, if you want to jump in and have a little chat about your kind of perspective from East Street. But the reason why we wanted to pose this question, this kind of broad question of how to maintain a grassroots energy whilst growing in ambition and growing an organization in scale and maybe gaining more responsibilities, is because it's something that we're really directly dealing with right now. And this is kind of a nice space for us to chat about some of the things that we've been going through personally, and also some of the things that we've seen working with other artist-led organizations. We work primarily with artist-led organizations, and this is something that comes up sometimes, and I've never seen a resource anywhere that kind of addresses it in this way, not in a Zoom call. It's often in a big heavy document, and I'm not much of a reader, so yeah, that can sometimes be challenging for me. But yeah, I suppose in terms of us as an organization, we started off very, I mean, we're still kind of small, but we started off really small, just in the 3rd year of university, and we were like, we want to work together and we want to make art, but we also want to kind of produce and curate and create exhibitions and platform other artists other than ourselves. And in the beginning, that was fine. That kind of grassroots, peer supported community vibe of, well, if I do you a favor, then will you do me a favor? We'll swap what we have, and that will grow what we all have, which is great. And we love that. We love a labor exchange, and we love a model of kind of community-led action. But there's only so long that you can kind of do that for before maybe you want to do more and you need some money to do that, or maybe you need to be paid more, or just want more money to be able to grow projects in ambition and grow the scale of them. And I suppose there's no framework for how we do that. So it'll be nice to hear from you, Kate, from E Street's kind of very long-standing perspective of being an artist-led organisation and maintaining that. Yeah, maybe I'll stop talking for a little bit and let you chat about something, Kate.
Well, I think you just you touched on something then that was quite interesting, and it's something that so Hive was a conference that took place in May, and this conference was the legacy conference of Guild, which has been a 5-year sector support programme for artist-led spaces. And similar to the conversation today, a lot of the programming was around how do we develop what we do without denying who we are. And actually, one of the really great and meaty kind of conversations I ended up having with someone was about nepotism, and I think that's quite an interesting sort of topic to unpack, because I think when I first started at E Street, there was a lot of criticism around the artists that we work with and support, and the fact that a lot of our connections we kind of already had, and that we weren't serving groups or communities that we didn't know about. And actually I think at the time maybe I shared some of that criticism, but on reflection and working with other artist-led spaces, I think I can see how, even just hearing you speak, how you go from that very DIY, labor sort of swap model, and then you quickly grow, and then but your ethos is still the same, and you're still like rooted in this kind of, we're really DIY, we just need a few people to help us do this thing. I'll ask my friend to come and run this workshop, and then I know this person that has these materials. But then when you're professionalizing and you're growing, and sometimes at a very quick pace, it's like, when does it then suddenly become quite nepotistic? And it's like, how do you then put in policies and procedures to prevent that? And I think that's really just a really interesting concept in itself.
Yeah, that's an interesting take on it as well, because I think there's a lot about nepotism going around at the moment. It's kind of within pop culture, particularly focused on I guess, nepotism babies, and the amount of kind of, I suppose, famous or successful people who are successful because they had the connections and the links to give them access to opportunities. I think I read somewhere that Kylie Jenner is on a self-made millionaire list or something. What?
Like one of the youngest.
Yeah, but she's not self-made.
No, I know.
It's one of those she's making a lot of money, good for her, but I kind of draw the line at her being called self-made. But yeah, I suppose it does come from a very innocent place as well. It's how you get things done in those kind of early years. And I think we were having a chat a few days ago about the sort of the cycle of an artist-led organisation. And I don't have the specific data around this, but it feels that as you sort of go along, that sort of third year is kind of the trickiest. I think there's a lot of there's a lot of information about businesses often closing after a year, like traditional, like I suppose, shops and things like that. But I think with artist-led organizations, it's such a passion project. It's not something you would think, oh, I've done it for a year and that's it, unless that was the idea for it. And so you kind of keep pushing it and you just keep going and you try and give it as much energy as you can. But the best way to do that is often in those community networks. And you do get caught in this trap of, oh, well, I know this person already and I know they'll do a good job. So, you know, it's organizations at this scale anyway, it's just how things happen. But yeah, I suppose I'm glad that it was brought up. Yeah, I mean, obviously Hive sounded like it was great. We weren't able to go, unfortunately, in the end, but we sent some friends along for us. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, did anything else come up at Hive that you think might be relevant here today, Kate, that we could kind of pick up on?
Yeah, a lot of conversation was around identity as well, about how your own personal identity is wrapped up in the identity of the artist-led space that you have developed and grown, but also how your kind of maybe DIY ethos identity at the start, how in like professionalizing, how do you like maintain that identity? And I think that's definitely something that E Street have really like struggled with, and it feels really like at odds quite a lot of the time, because you know, Karen and John by their very nature are quite you know, maverick sort of artists. They're quite like socialists, and they, you know, they really like have this strong sort of vibe to them, and I think that like is something that's just it within E Street Arts. But then, you know, the sort of like anti that is like all of the process and procedure and bureaucracy that comes with it, and that's not very cool or very like, you know, it's not a vibe, is it? So it's like, how do you still be a professional organization? And you know, I mean, quite a lot of people say that we're now an institution, and like I know Karen and John hate to be you know, referred to as an institution, because they're like, why not, we're still like an artist-led, you know, DIY organization. But you can't, 30 years on, can you still call yourselves that? It's like it feels really at odds sometimes. So yeah, that came up quite a bit, and I think, like you say, it's that kind of early energy and, you know, excitement and all of these kind of beautiful sort of projects that just kind of happen, and you're really energetic and you're sort of like building this brand and this identity. But how do you sustain that over like a long period of time, and how do you, you know, continue to grow and professionalize without losing that like energy and that vibe, so to speak?
I think the energy changes. Would you agree with that? I think I was saying that I'm looking at Beck here and she sat next to me here. Oh, Zoom. But I think for me anyway, and Beck do disagree with me, but I think that energy changes. I was saying the other day to Beck, like, I don't feel the same as I did when we first started Short Supply. And that's a good thing and a bad thing, because I also think that the things that I enjoy about it are things that we increasingly do less of. And we try and make space to do those things where we can. But a lot of the other stuff comes in, the admin, the bureaucracy, and, you know, but also just like needing a structure, needing to work to a structure to keep things smooth. And I think this is something that we encountered when we were like working with kind of School of the Damned and like artist-led kind of education platforms, like alternative education platforms, because they're founded on that idea of, we'll all just get together and do a thing and see how it goes. And it's really hard to do. It's really hard to do it that way, because, you know, everyone is on a different schedule. You want to keep that energy, that DIY, do it yourself, grassroots vibe, but that vibe clashes with the work that has to go in to make sure that everyone is included and that the work feels meaningful. and that even something even happens, you know, it's a real challenge. And I suppose a lot of what we learned from that we've tried to embed into short supply, and what we try and continue as we sort of grow. But it's, yeah, that energy changes, and I think it's finding, you know, where you do get that excitement from, and trying to do more of that. I know at the moment we're working on a big project that is giving us a lot of joy and a lot of excitement,
but also a lot of stress.
Also a lot of stress.
And a lot of sleepless nights.
And a lot of sleepless nights. But, you know, it's something that we want to do more because we've identified we like this. This also fits into our ethos and what we enjoy. But, you know, it's like continuing to create that structure so that it can continue. It means just being organised and prepared, which is not something artists often are, or we're not told how to be. That feels like a very businessy thing, and we're not told how to do that. So yeah, it is hard, but there's like, would you agree, Kate, that I think there's a period, you have to have a period of like taking stuff in, and then a period of like producing things, and those two don't really mix. Like, you know, I need time to absorb stuff, and now I can put things out. Or do you agree with that, or do you feel differently?
I mean, there's definitely, you know, periods of flux, and, you know, intense periods of delivery, and, you know, intense periods of research and development. But I guess if you're working across like multiple programs, it's hard to like define it, so to speak, in those kind of like categories. But I mean, even just then when you were talking, I started to think about like about privilege, and just, you know, it is a privilege to be very like anarchist in your like sort of approach to producing and getting involved in projects. Like, people, only a certain type of person can give free labor and make things happen, and we need to recognize that. So actually putting a lot of like process and procedure in place, and, you know, ensuring people are, you know, paid for what they do, or paid for what they're involved in, and that we work in a set amount of time, you know, a set amount of time, people who have caring responsibilities, like all these things are like factors that actually just enable like an equality of opportunity, rather than just a, you know, a group of privileged people just getting together, just doing shit for the sake of it.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? I think this image that we have of like sort of punk DIY spaces that are like, you know, messy and a bit like chaotic, and that sort of foster this idea of like grassroots energy, are often spaces that are full of people who are really privileged. I think there's a conversation in there about
having a space like that is a privilege.
Yeah.
Even these meanwhile spaces, or these cold warehouses, or old shops that we take up space in, it's still a privilege to be able to have access to those, because a lot of the time they're not cheap. And another privilege is having the time to go to the space, like, you know, being a freelancer, but, you know, a lot of the time artists or you know, graduates have still got that survival job, that job in retail, that job in hospitality. And to say that, you know, that you're not chained down to a larger organization sometimes is a privilege as well. And I think time is a privilege, energy is a privilege. Whether we can afford some of these privileges.
Yeah, it's tricky. It makes me think a little bit of I can't remember. I read a really good article ages ago, and I'm sure there's loads of kind of information about this, but it was just a article about like clothes, like working class clothes, and like the sort of doing an impression almost of like that, oh, we're just down and dirty and doing it. And,
like you come from pits.
Yeah. But I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to go into too much into that, because I don't have the article, but maybe I'll send it to Sunshine later, and she can drop it in the chat.
something else, I guess, that we kind of touched on at Hive, and I know we've spoken about it a little bit, is about sustaining or like maintaining, and whether like growth is actually like necessary. And I think this kind of push from the Arts Council to professionalise, and in the latest MPO applications there was a massive push from the Arts Council to implement more robust governance structure, and at the same time they encouraged a lot of artist-led spaces to apply for national portfolio organisation funding, and it felt like the two were at odds. And so, I mean, even in the cohort that I managed, of the 25 artist-led spaces, I think we had 6 that applied for MPO in this round, and none of them were successful. And they all took a lot of time, a lot of time, and a lot of unpaid labour implementing some really robust governance structures that it's like, how do they get that time back? Like, I mean, it probably will serve the business, like they probably will get a lot from it, but actually, was it necessary to their business model? Did they need it? Is it going to completely derail what they are about? So yeah, those kind of conversations came up quite a lot as well, and I'm just wondering, for short supply, like how do you guys operate? Do you have a board, or is that something that you'd want to like implement? Do you feel like there's a lot of pressure to go down that route?
I mean, just before we kind of go into that, I just do feel compelled to add that like constant growth it's capitalism. It's, if you aren't getting bigger and you aren't making more, then what's the point?
Yeah.
And it is quite a radical notion to be like, well, actually, how about we just make enough, and that's enough. And I think that is something that I would love to see more of. But I mean, for us, it's disappointing to hear that that none of the guild cohort got MPO, because I think that all of them would do great at it. I mean, it's one of those though, any organisation would do better if given the resources to do so. But particularly, there were some really great groups in guild. But yeah, I mean, for us, we have an advisory board who we've just changed some members around recently. We kind of implemented our first round of advisors in 2021, around the time when we got our first kind of big Arts Council bid, because we needed their guidance and their support, and we thought, well, we should probably add some more people to the team. But I think informally we consider all of the kind of freelancers that we work with as being part of the team as well. Apart from me, Beck and Grace kind of doing a lot of the heavy stuff, there's so many other people who short supply couldn't exist without. And yeah, the advisors are a part of that. We're also working on improving kind of our policies for how we operate as an organisation. We've not gone really in detail into the governance structure stuff, because as you say, it sort of feels a bit like, well, before we're all being paid really fairly, it feels a little bit silly to put so much work in when we could let that grow organically and as we need it. But yeah, again, it's that kind of stuff. We're just winging it. We're just figuring it out as we go along. I think there's no sort of hard kind of guidelines for, well, here's some steps you could take. It's just kind of bits of information that we've plucked from people who want to help us, from people who we look up to, and just gathering. It's that gathering of the information. But yeah, I appreciate that you mentioned about the MPO application process, because we've spoken to a lot of organizations who went for it and both got it and didn't get it,
or I've had it in the past and then didn't get it this time.
Yeah, and it's a grueling process, and I think it's a microcosm of a wider problem in the art world of like time spent trying to get something. And then the argument of, well, you know, it'll be worth it though, because it's good that you have this thing now. And it's like, yeah, but it probably would have been better if, you know, I would have some actual money to either be getting on with something else or just for me because I need to live. And I think that's a really hard, it feels difficult to address that. We worked on a really big bid recently and it took us, like, all told we were working on it for a really long time. And to not get it was like, oh, it just really knocks the wind out of you. And I guess it got us thinking, and this is it, okay, this is the thing, and that's both good and bad.
Here's the thing.
It got us thinking about, like, okay, well, how as short supply can we do better? You know, what can we change that's different to this process that we've just been through that will be better? But the problem is there's only so many times that you can do that. There's only so many times that you can try and address problems that you're facing before you're just kind of backing into yourself, and you know, making yourself feel awful for not doing well enough, for not having done better, when also at the same time not receiving the resources that might help you to do that. Yeah, I don't know.
You've worded that a lot better than I would have. I would have just been like, sometimes you get tired of, you know, sticking it to the man. But what Molly said was a lot better.
No, yours was more succinct. I think let's use the right terminology here.
We're all professionals.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think in terms of, like, we were sat down after we didn't get this bid, and we were like, what should we do? Like, how can we, like, you know, create budget to pay people to do applications? You know, like, how can we do that? And after many exhausting hours of chatting about it, you just come back round to the point of, well, we need to make more money to do that. So, so yeah, I don't know. It's hard, isn't it?
It's like a snake that eats itself. Just constantly that circle of, right, I need money, but I need people to help me write the money thing, because I need time to deliver something to get money. But then I need money to get somebody to help me, and it's like a pretzel. Lots of analogies here.
I mean, I do wonder if, Kate, you could just maybe say some, because being like East Street Arts, being an NPO, I mean, because I've been told, I obviously don't know firsthand, but I've been told a lot about, like, the work that goes in to be an NPO. Sometimes, depending on how much you're getting, doesn't even feel worth it, because, you know, a lot of the funding goes towards just paying people to be running the thing anyway. I mean, what's it like for East Street? Is it, you know, does it feel like, oh yes, a weight's off, or oh, it's just a different kind of set of challenges?
I think,
sorry, that was a bit of a hard question, wasn't it?
I can answer it from my perspective, but I don't want to be like the voice of East Street, but
yeah, sure.
But I think it would be unfair for me to sit here and say, oh, you know, it's just another set of problems, because without it, you know, we wouldn't be able to do the work that we do, and we have to recognize that, and it is another privilege, isn't it, to be an NPO, like it just is, and no matter how many times you have received it, you should never be like complacent in the fact that you have it, and so I want to recognize that first off, but this time round it definitely feels like there's a big ask. There's a big ask for their money, and even today I've sat in a fair few meetings about data and data collection, data storage, data analysis, all of that. It's like, how much is my job now just like about data and not about like the creative you know, programming and like working with artists. I mean, don't get me wrong, we'll still be doing that, but yeah, there's a lot of like evaluation that comes with MPO. And I think E Street already has quite a lot of processes and policies and procedures that they've implemented over the years. But if you was to be a new MPO in this round, I think that would be a massive chunk of work to start, you know, writing all of those, workshopping them, getting consultants in. So yeah, that feels like a massive process if you were to receive the funding. And then I often struggle with, I mean, you spoke about before, the idea of like being able to breathe and just like not be delivering. And I feel like sometimes like with MPO funding, like you're constantly on this like hamster wheel. Like I've got an activity plan now that I need to deliver against, but I've had almost no time to research and plan, and it's just like we've just got to deliver against it. And I think the move from a more person-centered like relationship with your relationship manager is now all of the way Arts Council will check in will be through your board reporting. So you know, all of that, it feels like very impersonal. I need to like be delivering so then I can report, I can gather data, you know, and it's very fast paced. And but again, like that sounds like a massive moan, and
No.
I guess like I can moan slightly, but then I'm also like, but it's also a massive privilege because we get to do things that we want to do, and
I asked you a question on purpose, Kate. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to speak over.
Sunshine, did you want to come in on this? I feel
Oh, yeah. Oh, were you referring to me, Molly? I didn't realize. No, I was just turning on my camera to signal that we're coming to the end of the first half, but I didn't mean to interrupt that flow of conversation. But while my camera was off, I was just like nodding away at so much of what you were saying about this. The push-pull, constant push-pull of the wanting to further get away from the chaos of just kind of like scraping by, you know, of trying to just make things happen with nothing, and putting in some structures to ensure, like Molly said so succinctly, that people can be included, so you can pay people to be involved, and so you can have the right structures for a project to give it like the resources it deserves, and for it to last longer, maybe, you know, hiring a space for long enough to show the work, etc. And yet, like the moment you step foot into this world of admin and project grant writing and all of that, you are, it's just mired in so much this very specific kind of organization and packaging and delivering that comes with it, you know. And it all comes from, you know, the way the funding bodies perceive the worth and the value of these projects. You know, they give it all these lovely, like, we talk about Arts Council England a lot in Harshlight, but that is inevitable just because they are such a huge funder of projects up and down England. And yeah, the terminology that's used and how confusing it can be, or you know, even having to use words that feel completely unnatural, like a second language, you know, or not even within your language, to talk about these things, and just to make it comprehensible so that you can get the money and then do the project. And then it almost feels like these two quite distinct worlds, you know, of the programming side of things, and then this and then so you're living this kind of quite divided you're like quite a divided self, but yeah, like there's so much that you were saying all along there that I've experienced also from my own DIY background, and when I lived in Berlin, and it's the same thing, you know. Oh, if only, you know, we could have a bit more money and do this and do that. And then once you are within that more structured realm, you also go like, oh, but I have no time. I'm like just trying to make sure people are getting the evaluation cards and thinking that way, like, oh yeah, that's a really good box ticker. And you're like, oh my gosh, when did this start happening? You know? So it is that push-pull a lot. As I have said that, I'm just looking at the clock, and I do want to give our interpreters, by the way, thank you, Monique and Angel, for doing this. I should have introduced you at the start. My apologies. Some time to take a break, and also any deaf audiences to take a break. So let's just draw a line under it for now, and then come back at just 5 to 8 promptly, so that we can also get as much out of this conversation as possible, but while ending it on time. So yeah, I'll see everybody back at 5 to 8. All right, we can turn off our cameras now for a bit and then come back. See ya.
Okay, see you soon.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our second half of today's Harsh Lights. Yeah, so as we mentioned earlier, we wanted to separate the two halves into two kind of different questions to work around. And so the first half, we were looking at thinking about ambition, growing in ambition and scale while maintaining a grassroots vision. And we kind of talked around NPOs and the push-pull of DIY energy versus the intricacies of bureaucracy and data collection and all that fun stuff. But in the second half, we kind of want to look at how to set ourselves safe levels of challenges as you grow. So that's quite a big, it can be sort of interpreted in a number of ways. So I'll be really interested to see how Kate, Molly, and Beck will be exploring this. Again, I'll come back just shortly before to tie things up. But I think it'll be around 20 past 8 that I'll do that, so that we give ourselves about 10 minutes at the end in case anybody in the audience wants to ask any questions, or just for us to kind of, you know, have a summary kind of moment as well. Okay, thank you, everyone. And do use the chat to type in notes. See you shortly.
Yeah, I feel like threw a curveball at you in the last one, Kate. So I'm expecting some curveballs for this one. Do throw them our way. That's why I enjoy doing things like this, because I'm a dick. But yeah, I think this kind of again, safe levels of challenge, criticism, and care. I think it would be nice for you to start on this one, Kate, because I know that through kind of Guild and through Hive, the conference, a lot of this stuff has kind of been floating around in East Street Art's collective brain. So maybe kick it off, and we'll pick it up and see where it goes.
Oh, where to start? It's such a big topic, isn't it? Safe levels of challenge. I mean, I guess when I start to think about that, I think about like power dynamics. That feels like a big thing. Something that came up in Hive quite a bit was networking, and then also how you challenge status quo, so to speak. But then a lot of our industry obviously is built on the networks that you forge, that tends to be how you get ahead, really. So it's like, how can you be an effective like disruptor but like still like be successful? It feels, yeah, I remember having like a really great session with Teresa Cisneros, who works at the Welcome Collection. And she was like, my whole thing is just this kind of she just is a disruptor. She is like, that's what she, self-professed disruptor. But she even said, in the session, it has like hindered parts of my career, like, and I do need to recognize that, but like I have a lot of integrity, and and I do want to challenge things, and I won't stop doing that because I don't think it's going to benefit my career in a certain way. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, that really like, I found it really refreshing to hear someone say that, because I'm not backwards in coming forwards. I'll just say if something doesn't sit well with me, and I think I do have quite a lot of integrity, and I do like to challenge things by my very nature. So yeah, how do you like safeguard yourself and your career against like challenging?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's that sort of I can't remember what that kind of graph is called, but it's about, the way that I think of this anyway is there, where is the level of challenge and where is the level of support? Because if it's high challenge, low support, then obviously that's not clicking. But if it's kind of low challenge, high support, but there's also not enough pushing, that doesn't really work either. And it's finding that balance that is really tricky. And I think a lot of what we observe in kind of larger organizations is lots of challenge, not a great deal of support, and whether that is within an artist-led organization or not, because it is hard to navigate doing that right. And a lot of that kind of comes down to the funding that's available, the training that's available. If we're artist-led, we've come from a background of teaching ourselves things and relying on each other. And that kind of knowledge that might be useful as you get to those more challenging stages isn't necessarily there. So yeah, it certainly is a tricky one. But I think that for us, it's about, what I try and keep in mind is that kind of image of like, am I, challenging someone to do something difficult, but am I also supporting them to help them do that? And I think that's kind of what we did. So this year for the graduate show that we do, we're working with a new graduate collective who are curating it and producing it and doing a lot of the work to make it happen. And we did it this way because, we wanted to pass on that opportunity to give a graduate collective a chance to produce a show, and do something themselves and like get that experience on their CV, but get that knowledge in their brains, but also like give them our time to help them do it in a way that there's more structure. So,
And help them with the funds.
And help them with the funds as well. But I think it's one of those situations where, they do have a little bit of funding from us to make it happen, but what the most valuable thing we can offer them is our time, so that when they try things, give things a go, the way that you would as an artist-led collective, and you're just trying to do a show and you're trying to make something happen. But often you do it and there's no one there to help you figure it out. There's no one there that you can turn to if something goes wrong, if there's an ethical dilemma, or if someone is upset, or there is something that would require procedure. We can then be there to support them with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the balance that we've kind of tried to strike with this project, and it's kind of the first of what will hopefully be many projects where we can hand over that chance to have some experience, but also within a structure that doesn't just rely on them putting all of that work in, being really challenged and not getting any support.
I think as well, like quite a lot of the guild groups, when I was conducting the the evaluation of the last few months, I asked, what have you got out of this past 5 years? Like, what has been the most influential program within the 5 years that has had the biggest impact on you? But quite a lot of the group said, you know what, it's just having like the backing of East Street Arts, like, and not to like blow East Street Arts trumpet or anything, but just to like have that bigger organization that you can turn to for support when someone is challenging a decision that you've made, or you've been knocked back from a piece of funding, or you've received some pretty harsh like criticism from audiences. Just being able to like pick up a phone and be like, I've had the worst week ever, this has been really shit, how do I actually handle this? And I'm not saying we've got all the answers, because we definitely haven't. And we're still learning massively as well, but I think just that like camaraderie and that like sharing of like, right, I've received some critique, or I'm dealing with a very challenging situation, how would you deal with this? How have others dealt with it? Do you have a policy that we can look at, rework, reuse? And it's just, I think as an artist, let's face, like you sometimes like you feel so like alone when you're in that situation. So like being part of a network or a cohort, I think a lot of the groups have found that to be like the most valuable thing within Guild, because they've needed like a little bit of hand holding, but I think we all kind of want that.
We all want someone to hold our hand.
Yeah,
It's a nice thing. And often I suppose, and again, kind of that thing I was saying of the way that these things start comes from a place of not like being given all of the education and all of the knowledge and all of the foundation of what you might learn in a business degree, or what you might learn doing financing or whatever. It doesn't come from a position of, right, well, I know how to do this, so I'll just do it. It more comes from it comes from a different place, a place of like curiosity, and a place of like passion.
But we were even talking about this before, Molly, about when you're within university and you're receiving criticism or critique from your lecturers, it feels easier to digest because you're in that environment and you're with your peers, and it feels like it's a process that you can go through, and it's very it's almost like you're in a cocoon, and it's like easier to digest. But once you've left university and someone's delivering some critique against a project that you're working on, or a piece of work, you're suddenly very vulnerable, because you're like out in the world and you're like, shit, is this gonna like massively impact like my career? Is this it? Am I just a shit artist from now on? You feel really like alone in it, don't you? So I think there needs to be like you say, safe levels of critique as well, and to be done kind of in a kind of group setting, or like a format that you can like draw on the experience of like other people as well.
I mean, everything about the structure of how university works creates the, I don't want to say perfect, but it creates the ecology, it creates the circumstances that allow you to succeed. And that obviously doesn't work out for everybody, but having a loan so that you can probably spend as much time as you possibly can at uni to invest in making the art. You always have people around you who you can ask these things to. You have people who are often industry professionals, as well as being within a teaching setting, who can impart that knowledge. Like everything about it is within a little bubble, a cocoon, as you say, and it creates the environment for these things to sit. And yeah, it sort of, you know, I know from our experience when we left, it was like, oh, all the structure's gone, you know, and now we're just here, just figuring it out. And I don't know how, you know, I don't think any of us know how to reconcile that, because I don't think anyone is like crying out for just to repeat their university experience year after year. But certainly some things that could do with, you know, they really could do with being some more structure around it, to make space for it. And I almost think that's kind of what Harsh Light is as well. It's kind of giving space to a kind of facilitated and held conversation, which doesn't really happen at the pub, which sometimes is fun, but sometimes you could just do with someone to say, right, that's enough. We need to get the policies out. Yeah.
And have you found yourself, you know, in certain projects, have you had to really quickly pull together, you know, a policy, or, you know, have you had that situation in the past?
Well, we've certainly had challenges. We've certainly not done everything right all the time. You know, some projects, yeah, we've encountered kind of big issues with things, with mistakes that we'd made in the way that we programmed them, the artists that we selected, the nature of the show itself, that, you know, when you are just doing things that interest you, you're not necessarily thinking about all of the ethical consequences and the perspectives of other people that should maybe feed into something. You're just doing it. But yeah, we've certainly encountered things that have made us think, oh god, yeah, we really could have done that much better. And so we've kind of then addressed it and changed it. And, you know, we've not come across a problem yet that we couldn't solve, in one way or
Apart
another.
from world hunger and homelessness. Not solved that yet, but, you know, we'll get there. But I think it's like what Molly was saying though about, I've completely lost my train of thought. I remember the point I was going to make. No, that's gone as well. Never mind.
Very good.
Thanks.
Very good bit. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll stick to being quiet.
No. Was it going to be something about that one show that we did that we had quite a few issues? No.
I mean, I wasn't going to be specific, but I think it's more, I think the gist of what I was going to say was like, oh, I got it.
It's so juicy of an idea, you can't fathom it, Kate.
I just can't get it out. No, just ignore me. I can't get it out. There's no words.
You're making me giggle.
Sorry.
I'm trying not to.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying. Yeah, it's there, but it's not here yet.
That's okay. That's okay. Should we just carry on and you just chime in when you're ready?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even like, you know, I say we're not perfect because I just think, I mean, policies should just be live documents anyway, shouldn't they? There's always new thinking, new research. Yeah. You're always going to learn from a situation. That's why we have project debriefs. You know, you'll always be adapting. So I don't think there's like the perfect like policy that ticks every box. I don't think that's you know, in existence. And I do think policies tend to like flux and change based on like your remit and your area of work. But I think it's just, it feels like it's a lot of work that we're all doing individually, and that we're not very good at like sharing that resource. You know, if we're spending, you know, however much money on consultants or however much time, you know, rewriting these or conducting research, why are we not just all sharing like our policies? And I mean organizations are getting better at that. I think you know, there is quite a lot of resources online now, but it still feels quite slow, doesn't it? But yeah, I think even the guild cohort, we were all working, especially the ones that were applying for MPO, like really working to try and get all of their like policies and procedures up, up to date. And I was like, let's just all like have a bit of a workshop, an online workshop, and just like pull one up and start working on it together. Like we don't all have to like be doing all of this labor separately. Feels just like counterproductive, really.
I think it might be a combination of, one, I think the very real competition culture that exists in the art world that makes things challenging. Like, I guess, short supply, the belief of short supply is that there's space for everyone and we just have to change the way that we approach things. But obviously changing the way that education is, like often a lot of that individualistic stuff does come from university education, how we're taught, the artists that were shown, their journeys, what a successful artist looks like, has quite a hard definition in uni. And the wider, obviously, like, I mean, capitalism and everything obviously feeds into all of this, but to not get into a whole rant about that, it's the sense of also not really even knowing how to ask for that help, not even having that language of, I don't know how to write a policy, and maybe I feel embarrassed to ask too. Maybe I didn't even know, this is something I didn't even know I needed. I've got another graph in my head, Kate, of like things that you know, things that you know that you don't know, things that you don't know that you don't know, and things that you know but you've forgotten or something like that. Like it's again, something else ends sorry, that was
yeah, good luck for Angel trying to make sense of
I
that.
know, sorry, Angel. You've come in at a bad time for me just doing all the finger drawing. But like that thing of things that you don't know yet, that's the challenge, isn't it? That's where this policy stuff comes in. Like, we don't even know what we need to have, in place yet for, MPO or a bigger application, whatever. And I think, you're right there, Kate, about that knowledge sharing. It's really difficult. And it might, I don't think it needs to be, but it certainly can feel it.
I think
what I would love in an ideal world is for institutions to better support artist-led spaces in their locality, because I feel like the artist-led spaces are that conduit between the graduates that come through, the sort of emerging local artists, and this and sort of the massive national, international shows that these institutions put on. And artist-led spaces are this kind of like beautiful, like fluid, like middle ground that is just like, this intersect of people, and institutions need to kind of recognize that significant like work that they do and help them, just like foster a really good relationship with them and recognize that they are important to this locality, and that they're happy to share all of these resources. They're they might be MPOs, they probably are MPOs, they probably receive local funding as well. They've got the staffing and the infrastructure, they've got all the policies already. They should be working with the artist-led spaces to help implement all of these like policies, so to speak. I just feel like that's a responsibility that they should be upholding.
And I think for graduates and early career artists, regardless of their kind of like locality, it's the kind of fear or the uncertainty in knowing how to challenge these larger institutions or how to speak to these artist-led places. Because graduates, early career artists can look up and find the information how to get a seat at the table, as the saying goes. They're taught, they can read about it, they can teach themselves to get a seat at the table. But I think what artist-led and grassroots, what that kind of ecology is. It's more teaching each other how to make their own table. And I think that that's something. Help.
Yeah.
Build on it.
Yeah, I'm piecing it together. Well, I mean, what you've said there, Kate, was quite meaty. So I've digested it all.
I mean, you know me, we've sat in rooms and I've had like massive like aspirations. So I'm here to change the world.
Yes. Oh, I know. Yeah, I remember.
No more gatekeeping, no more gaslighting.
No more girl bossing. Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those. How much do we criticize institutions, and how much do we give them kind of the good grace of understanding that they're also running through a rat race, and that, you know, it's like
that challenge and support thing again. Like, we can challenge them, but then how much support are we also giving them, because they've got their own budgets and agendas and plans going forwards that aren't publicly shared to the average artist. So it's one of those where it's that you've still got to have that compassion towards you, even the larger institutions. You've got to have that, you've got to be able to safely challenge and have that confidence to ask these questions. Otherwise there's no understanding, there's no support, there's no stuff.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, it's I think for me it's not so much, oh, poor them. I think it is, if we want to have a dialogue, it would be great if they were more transparent about it. I think the transparency is the problem, isn't it? It's the, well, you might be going through a lot, but we wouldn't have a clue. We just see you getting all the cash in and thinking, why aren't you sharing that knowledge? So again, what you were saying, Kate, that sharing of that information, that's what I think, that's what would make a big difference.
Yeah. And information is so important. It's not like it, that is a resource. And just like even the way that we've been doing with these grants with artists, just sharing not pre-written grants that other artists that we've worked with have worked on, and like kind of just everyone's sharing. It's like there's taking bits out and rewriting them, you know, like there's, again, like when you're kind of almost trapped in this language of having to communicate your work in a very, very specific way that it doesn't feel natural to you necessarily, you know. The only way you can kind of get around that, because you all go through this same channel, is to like try and find ways of fixing it, and you need all the resources you can to try and like get all your swirls of ideas and individuality and idiosyncrasies into this very, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is really, I think this idea of what a safe challenge is really resonates in terms of, you know, how you put yourself out there as an artist or as an organization. You know, now you, back in Molly, you kind of the other day mentioned how like to reconfigure thinking of yourselves just as like two individuals into an organization, and kind of putting yourself out there to represent a certain, you know, like when I think of Short Supply, that it comes with it a whole bunch of different things, like, you know, there's an energy, but there's also like support, there's a sense of you know, being close to the ground, and yet like being very articulate about these conditions of being close to the ground, you know. So I think it's and then now I can sense that you're at that sort of transitional moment where like, okay, are we doing this, you know, is this how, like, and how do we just keep this going and yet like remember how this feels, you know, like what it feels like starting out, what it feels like right now for us, like as we struggle with these grants, getting some, not getting some, and yet becoming more fluent as well in this space. Because in gaining fluency in something, you know, I lived for a number of years in Germany, and now I was fluent in German, and now you forget that, you know, and it can happen. You like, you know, have a moment of becoming something, and you slowly do speak this bureaucratic language, speak in those acronyms, and that petering out of the original sort of like burst of creativity and energy and very sort of concise a critique of things, sort of without you knowing it, realizing it, sort of goes away. So it's like maintaining consciousness of both is just as much of a balance as talking about all of these sort of practical things. It's kind of holding on to that somehow as well. So it's just
Kind of
been really,
replaced. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say it's kind of replaced with the necessary efficiency, I think. Where in the beginning you're not thinking about how you can do things efficiently because you're thinking about like, I'm a freelancer, my time is money. You know, if I can get this and this done today, that means I can get this done tomorrow, and whatever. And I think that comes with, I really like the way you described, you compared your kind of fluency in German to kind of the language that you use and that you learn in kind of developing as kind of developing your own language of kind of this professionalism. That's such a great way of putting it. I've never thought about it that way.
I wish they had professionalism though on Duolingo. Like, where's French going to get me? I need to speak Arts Council.
Oh, the East Street Arts, Bloc Projects, Short Supply Collab, the Arts Speak app.
Yeah. Coming soon.
coming soon, watch this space.
Yeah, because what's our threatening little small animal that's going to keep knocking at your door? Like, they've got a green owl. What's our small threatening creature?
What's it the year of this year? The tiger? No, that was last year.
You know this. I think so. Oh my gosh, it is tiger. Yeah.
Oh, it is a tiger.
I mean, tigers are already threatening. So.
Anyway.
No, like it's exactly it's but what happens with language is a funny thing, isn't it? Once you kind of give it a name and give it a thing, it sort of takes on a certain solidity and becomes realer, you know. So while you try to maintain some skepticism using this language as a very pragmatic approach to trying to, well, let's say it, make some of your dreams come true, you know, like this is like your practice and things that are really quite otherwise don't have a space in capitalist life, you know, like you're trying to make the space for it. You have to also at the same time be really aware that you don't fully buy into it too, you know, like it's so hard, it really is. And language has that ability to like convince, you know, and once you kind of understand it, it kind of enters your lexicon, and what, you know, you got to be careful how you use it and somehow. But yeah, I'm aware that we are running down to our last 3 minutes, and I just wanted to make sure that there's something that Thomas said. I don't know if Thomas, you're still around, or whether you want to ask or follow up with that comment about, you know, not having the kind of pipeline almost of institution and artist-led support. You're more than welcome to enter something in there, or maybe the speakers while you're doing that, Thomas. I don't want to give you any pressure. You can follow up on it, but maybe, yeah, we can kind of respond to that a little bit. Maybe you can talk about the situation of art institution, artist-led support in your respective cities. We all, you know, are based in different places. Maybe Kate, you can start a little bit. I know East Street Arts is obviously a great sort of like advocate of artist-led spaces, but outside of that, perhaps.
Yeah, again, it's like we straddle that, like, I guess some people see us like an institution now, but, you know, we definitely like to remain artist led. I think, I mean, recently when someone wrote a bit of a review on Hive, they spoke quite beautifully about East Street Art's sort of like moral and social responsibility to give back. And Karen and John in particular, like, even though they have grown this organisation organically over these past 30 years, they've maintained that the ladder is always there, and that they want to bring people up with them, and they want to keep like sharing this knowledge, and that's kind of like why Guild came about in the first place. So I think we're trying to do that, and a lot of the work that we did in Guild was trying to facilitate those conversations with institutions and artist-led spaces. I can't give you a beautiful success story right now because there wasn't any. It kind of like it was like a process, and the intention is always there. The execution sometimes falls a little bit flat. I think we're all very naturally just very, very busy, and so people, even though they have the best intentions and understand like the need or the reason why artist-led spaces are existing in their area, and the kind of value in that, I think everyone gets like bogged down in their own sort of like you said, bureaucracy, and then it's hard to like lend a hand. I think if spaces are up for asking, I think naturally I have seen through Guild that institutions are willing to help, but there needs to be like an ask in order for them to like offer something. It's never just like a sort of mutual like relationship that's sustained over a period of time. It's always like an ask and we'll give you that for now, but there's not really any kind of solid sort of partnership working really. That's just my experience of Guild. I mean, there might be really great examples of it happening in the UK that people are more aware of, but yeah, that's my experience in Guild.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. I'm just trying to address the question that Thomas has put in the chat. I wonder if Molly and Bex, would you like to field that one, or anybody, and if it's Kate as well? And I'll just read the question out for our later audience. How can we open up those dialogues? I'm assuming between institutions and artist-led spaces. We probably artist-led spaces kind of resent, might be too strong a word, doing all the running and would love to be approached. Yeah, any thoughts?
Well, that was kind of what I was just saying, you know, that it's the onus is always on the artist-led space to understand what it wants and what it needs, and then to make that request, and that shouldn't be the case, because as we know, artist-led spaces are time poor, resources poor, so it should be the institution's responsibility as an organisation that has more resources to hand to recognise the significant work that they do. But it just needs a mind shift really. I think we need to become less internal and just start to work across. I mean, I think institutions are very good at like partnership working with sort of other charities and like community groups and like third sector, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think for some reason there's this like disconnect between the sort of like grassroots organisations and then the big sort of NPOs.
Just to jump in quick, I don't want to go on too long because I know we're kind of slightly over time. But I think actually something that we've realised and that we're trying to improve, like our short supply, is our ability to actually pitch ourselves. I think it's something that artists aren't encouraged to do. How do I pitch myself? How do I pitch an idea?
Or necessarily shown how to do either.
You know, it's not something that that is included in our education of being artists and of running artist-led organizations. So I think that a lot of the time, even if an institution were to approach an artist-led organization, or even if they were to approach them, you know, you're not quite sure how much you can ask for, you know, and how much you can and push and pull, that push and pull again of like, you know, it's if it's a collaboration, it should be a two-way thing. And you know, I know that we're certainly trying to work on our ability to articulate what we want to do, and you know, that includes its importance, and also knowing all the facts and knowing all the information that it needs to be able to exist. But that, again, that language, that like businessy language, I think that a lot of us don't know. It's become necessary for us anyway, and it might not be for everyone, but for us it's become necessary to try and learn more about that, to access support that is outside of the creative industries into different sectors, to understand how they work. Because in other sectors, it's a very understood relationship. I'll come to you, I'll give you an idea. You might not necessarily be able to support the exact thing that I'm telling you, but often we can find a resolution. And that doesn't really happen in the artist-led world. And I think that comes from artists feeling undervalued. Like, oh, they're giving me anything. Thank you. When actually it's, well, you know, artists bring a great deal of value and of knowledge, and an energy that I think institutions really want on the sly. They really want that, because, you know, artists and artist-led projects are there, as you said, Sunshine, on the ground with the artists, with the people that they want to meet. That's incredibly valuable, and we should be harnessing that.
Yeah. I think, it's just excuse me. It's just finding like the right, like what Thomas was saying, this two-way asking, you know, like how we can, I think where it has to start from the institutions themselves, as recognize and the recognition that they play a part in the broader ecology of their local sort of cultural landscape, and equally at the same time practitioners feeling that they also have the right to kind of go and pitch them, you know, pitch their work to institutions, and knowing how to kind of carry themselves in that way, and finding some sort of way to kind of open up all of these different channels a bit better, because at the moment everything's really siloed, and you know, even from like the artists to sometimes even artists themselves, they work so in such an isolated manner in their own studios, that even like having a collective around, that's like the next level, and then the artist-led space, and then, you know, there's so many sort of, because nothing is actually sort of, there's no conventional structure to things, to the art sector, the way you would maybe find in banks or, you know, schools, and it's kind of understood, you know, infrastructurally how things look, whereas it can be anything, I guess, in the arts, which is both a beauty and a curse, I suppose. So I think we'll just have to wrap it up there. We're a bit over time. Thank you so much, Kate, Molly, and Beck. Thank you, Angel. Thank you, Monique, for the BSL translation. And thank you also for people who came tonight. We will have this conversation online shortly. I have written a whole bunch of notes there in the chat. If you're interested, in fact, I'll just say this: if you're not interested, please just say so in the chat. Otherwise, I'll just email this out to everyone who has signed up on Eventbrite, so we can share our notes and our learning from tonight. But if I can just ask the speakers and the BSL interpreters to stick around for 5 minutes, and just to make sure everything was okay, that'd be great. But for everyone, thanks for coming, and hopefully we'll see you at another Harsh Lights. Bye.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, no worries. Bye, Sarah. Bye, Haley. Bye, Thomas.
See you later.
Thank you. Great. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bye, Charlie. That's good. Okay, I think that's it. Yay.
That's good.
Thanks so much, you guys.
That's it.
All good. That was really good, by the way. Thanks so much. It was really conversant, but it was there's so many really great points as well that cropped up, and just overall, outside of just the concepts of the conversation and stuff, was everything okay for everybody?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. It was really nice to have a little wrap up at the end of the day. I love it when things are in the evening. I can't stand it when things are like midday. Who wants that? Who wants that?
But the thing is that
Yeah.
now, like, my brain's like fizzing, and like I get too into stuff, and now I'll be like thinking about ideas
And this is why you're great, Kate. You should definitely have some food and try to.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll just watch something like Kardashians to like chill.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna do. Well, maybe not the Kardashians, maybe I'll else. What about everybody else? How are you gonna wind down tonight?
How that I was gonna say we've done a load of speaking. I was gonna say Monique or Angel, please feel free to.
Yeah.
You two, thank you so much.
Yeah.
No problem.
That's fine. It was really good. It was really interesting as well to hear both sides about the whole funding and so forth.
Yeah, do you do a lot of interpreting for the arts, Angel?
No, but I have a friend that does, and he tells me a lot about it.
Right. Yeah, well, hopefully you'll be working with us a little bit more on the harsh light stuff, and Monique as well. So find out a bit more about all the demons in the closet.
We'll eat a sandwich, I think, aren't we, Beck? Eat a sandwich.
I don't know, I'll find
Watch
something
some
in the
TV.
fridge.
We're watching Black Mirror at the moment.
We sometimes watch Black Mirror, or depending on the mood, we'll just watch like 999 on the front line or something on Channel 4.
That is good. That is a good one.
Two very different moods, but either way, there's going to be some food and there's going to be some dogs on the couch.
Paramedics, absolutely boss.
Yeah.
So impressive.
Yeah, we watched one over lunch, and they were like, "Oh, a hoax call," and we're there going, "Oh, you fuckers!" like it's a football match. Like we're yelling at the TV.
Oh gosh.
Oh, that sounds perfect for a wind down. I think I'm going to do something similar as well. All right.
I'm going to what you send us. Thank you.
No worries. Just invoice us, by the way, everybody invoice us. Send me your just to me now, I guess. We have no David to do the finance, so bear with me. I will get it paid, in very short order. So as soon as you invoice, then that be I'll get it sorted. Okay, guys, I'll let you go.
See you later. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Cheers.